I was just trying to work out what something was on the screen, but it's not on my screen, it's on Graham's. I was thinking, what's that in my room?
It's not the red bag hanging on my wall.
Yeah, it's the thing hanging up. I'm thinking, what's that? It's not here.
I'm just going to shut my window in case people start protesting about whatever again. There's been another protest at some point today. I wasn't sure what it was about, so I'll just shut the window.
Nothing you've said, I'm sure.
I wouldn't know.
Right, we've got a lucky number 13 attendees, so I'm going to get started. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the North East Young Fabians inaugural event, Eye on 2021 Elections and Electioneering in the North East. We are very lucky to be joined by Emma Lewell-Buck, who is the Member of Parliament for the greatest town on the face of the earth, not just because I'm from there, South Shields. Councillor Susan Dungworth, who is the leader of the Labour group on Northumberland County Council, and Councillor Graeme Miller, the leader of Sunderland City Council. One of the reasons I pitched this group to the Young Fabians is that in the Fabian society specifically, but I think more broadly in politics and political thinking, an awful lot of attention is paid to London and places around it. And very little attention is given specifically to the regions of England and arguably the northeast of England in particular. We've already made a good start in the Young Fabians in decentralising the organisation, and from now or very soon there are going to be groups in all the regions of England and all the nations of the UK, apart from Northern Ireland, I think. Specifically in the Northeast group, we've already started working on a review of the party's Northeast manifesto from last year. And the launch event for that, I'm very much hoping, is going to be our first real life event, if that becomes possible. We are also organising an event, I hope, with Chion Wura, the MP for Newcastle Central, to tally in with when the Labour Party's conference ought to have been. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that. At the weekend, I got a phone call from my dad saying that he'd received a letter to our house in Shields that I had been the victim of identity theft. And I called this Swedish bank I'd never heard of and was told, oh yeah, somebody in Dewsbury has used your name and address to try and get credit to buy a washing machine. And I thought to myself, I'm rather insulted by the lack of imagination there, because if you're going to take my name in vain, I would rather that you spent my money unlawfully on Ferraris and Caribbean holidays rather than washing machines in Dewsbury. And it struck me that if you're going to be a villain, at least be a competent villain, which I think leads me very seamlessly on to the shower of a Conservative government that we're dealing with at the moment. The problems we face in the Northeast are specifically acute, especially in relation to COVID-19. It's traditional in the Labour Party to talk about increasing employment and to talk about increasing the quality of employment. But what we're going to talk today, I hope, is about our drive to cause mass unemployment among Conservative elected representatives on the councils next year, and I hope in Parliament in 4 or 5 years. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to our expert guests, who I hope are going to talk to us about their experiences of campaigning in the Northeast, the specific challenges and opportunities we face there, and what we can do as an organisation of interested young people to get involved. So I'm going to hand over, first of all, to Councillor Graeme Miller.
Thank you very much, Graeme, and I'd like to thank Young Fabians for inviting me to be part of the panel this evening so we can have that conversation and that discussion about the way ahead. This is very well timed. We've just had the report come out from the Labour Party on the review of our 2019 catastrophe that was the general election outcome. I would advise everybody to read that document. It's 113 pages of joy. But seriously, we must understand the messages that are in there. And there is a lot of great work in that document because it covers a multitude of issues that if we don't address them will plague us going forward. And we saw what happened in December if we don't come to grips with the strategic problems that have impacted on our vote since, to be blunt, going back to 1970. So, light-hearted, we've got several operational challenges from that and a couple of really key strategic issues that we must look ourselves in the mirror on and decide how we're going to deal with them. The biggest issue for me is looking at how, as a party who represented the working classes and the working poor and those who were aspirational to get out of where they were and better themselves, which was what I grew up with in the 70s. We've become a party where we've lost 10 million of those votes over 40 years. And the Conservative Party now has more working class voters voting for them than we have. And that is a major communications issue for us that we must address. We must get into the C2D and E's and find out how we get those people to address the issue that we have always been for them, though they currently do not think that. Now, the second issue behind it, which ties in directly to it from me, is communications. And as Graeme's pointed out, you know, at the end of the day, social media, we did very well on social media in 2017, and we very nearly got into government because of the work that we did on social media, and we left the Conservatives in the gutter. They were nowhere on it. But we seemed to, and there was the cup of tea being delivered for Susan that she promised us earlier. We sat on our laurels after very nearly winning in 2017, and the Conservatives absolutely went to town on how they would beat us in 2019 on social media, and they absolutely kicked us all over the park on social media. So we need to have a look at how we engage with especially the old, because the young are voting for us now. When you look at the various reports that are out there showing voting trends, voting likelihoods, the Labour Party is ahead of the curve by some way against the Conservatives with younger voters. The problem is that if you're aged 60 and above, the likelihood is you absolutely will not vote for us now. And that is the problem. Though those people are now increasingly on social media. When you go back to 2012, I think if you were below 60, but above 40, there was only 25, 26% of people had a Facebook account. And above 60, it was only 13%. Now, nearly 50% of those people have a Facebook account and use Facebook as a way of getting information to determine what they actually are thinking and how they then want to vote. So we must look at our communications campaign across the piece, not just on economic circumstance, which is A's through to E's, but also on age, and they correlate strategically directly as far as I'm concerned. So that for me, for the party, is the thing that we really need to have a look at. What we say, how we say it, and how we talk to the people who grew up. This is our retirement. This is our grandparents, to be blunt, who grew up with unions supporting them, getting them contracts of employment, minimum wage, contracted hours, paid holidays, pensions, and now a lot of them won't vote for us. And that is the depth of the issue that we have to have, of how we address that and get trust back in there. Now, the good news is that the LGA has put out its recent polling of people across England to say, what do you think of your councils? And I'm hoping Susan's seen this, but you can go to the LGA and pick up the report. 84% of people living in their city areas like living where they live. That's up. 71% of them trust their councils and their councillors, which is massively up from last year, when we were on a slope downwards of that whole issue of people not trusting politicians, which was disgraceful, right? They don't trust MEPs, they don't trust MPs, they don't trust councillors, and they don't trust police and crime commissioners. Well, because of the COVID crisis, there's been a spike in the trust in councillors and councils. People are saying, three out of four of them are saying they trust their councils and they trust their councillors to do the best for them. And the base of all our activity going into local elections is definitely our wards with our councillors and those activists. But if we get that right, we then use that as the stepping stone to get MPs re-elected or new candidates elected for the first time. So we must take the point that people currently are starting to consider that councillors and councils are to be trusted. We have shown over the last 12 weeks that we have been looking after people, trying to ensure PPE gets to the right places. People understand that it's the government that's caused this, because the trust in the government's down to 8% on this LGA survey, and that's the lowest it's been for a little while. So we have the ability now, running into May for the local elections across England, to start addressing, well, how do we talk to people? What do we say to them? And my view on this is very, very simple. We've just got to tell them the truth. Brexit's done. It's just done. I love the fact that Keir Starmer said it. It's done and finished. That was the most poisonous thing that in Sunderland I had on the door, along with the fact that people did not like Jeremy Corbyn in the leadership. And those two toxic things are now gone. And we can reset that bar, and we must work on what we think our message is in England. Scotland and Wales are separate. Scotland, until we, at my personal view, until we give Scottish Labour independence from us so that they can do what they need to do to garner votes in Scotland, because at the moment, tied to our decision making in Westminster, and the SNP are having an absolute field day by just saying if you vote for Labour, you're just getting Westminster. It's the same as voting for the Tories, and we're being treated the same. So dealing with Scotland is a different problem. Dealing with Wales is a different problem. We need to be pushing out that we are local government. We do look after people. This has always been what we've been about. When you look at our record in local government in the areas where we're still strong, you can see what Labour councils deliver. The party must just give us a simple message. And that is the thing I'm hoping will come. At the moment, Keir Starmer's doing a great job of cementing the fact that we have a statesman that the English people, and I do mean the English, by the way, because Scotland is separate and Wales is separate here. We have a statesman that the English people are actually starting to think, you know what, that's somebody who's the leader of the Labour Party who we can trust. And you can see that in his personal ratings going up and Boris Johnson's ratings going down. You can see in the polls, and the polls are only ever a thing at the time, but we're nowhere near, what was it, 20 points down at the start of Boris's reign in the polls. And whether we're 3 points down or 5 points down in the polls now, that has been a gradual process, which has been because the shadow cabinet have played a blinder in supporting Keir and Angela. The MPs in London have been a united group with nobody running off to cause trouble for us in the media. And it's allowed the focus to be where it should be, on government policy, because we've got a shambles of a government. Honestly, we must be able to take them to task. I cannot personally imagine how the government are going to allow Boris Johnson to stay as Prime Minister for much longer. The Tories are not known for carrying lame ducks, and he's definitely heading towards being a lame duck, in my opinion. But as a party, we need a clear, simple set of messages on the economy, on the simple things from our manifesto, which the people liked, which was not nationalisation of everything, there was too much, but railways, very good. Housing, very good. We like all of that. And our green agenda and our 5G agenda, the things that will take us forward with the 21st century economy that we need. And if we get that right, and we work through councils to protect, and I think we could have a very good May. I genuinely think that if we get this right, because of the government being shambolic, we could have a very good May where people will see that the Labour Party locally has delivered, whereas the government has failed and continues to fail. Now, that's just gone over 11 minutes, Graeme, so I'll not say any more than that. And I'll let you add on to the next member of the panel, if that's okay. Hopefully that's good enough to kick off.
Thank you very much, Graeme. Emma.
Hi, thanks everyone for having us. I'll not talk as long because I think we need some time for questions and things. So you often hear that phrase, don't you, that we all know elections aren't just won at election time. And I've heard that hundreds of times, but more often than not, the people who say that rarely actually act on it. Now, I was first elected into Parliament in 2013, and at that time I had said there was no such thing as a CFC anymore, and that I was going to work South Shields like a marginal. I have done that, and I continue to do that, and as a result, and because of the excellent support that I've got in the constituency, I've now got one of the strongest majorities in the North East. So it does pay off. Majorities, high majorities, are there to lose if you don't work them. Back in even 2004, when I was a local councillor, it was even clear to me then that the approach taken by many seats, especially across South Tyneside, wasn't going to stand the test of time. We needed to radically change how we campaigned. Few have changed, but many haven't, and that's still something that I press on to this day. Now, thanks in a large part to social media, elected representatives need to be more accessible now, more accountable, and more active, and more than ever before, a part of the community that they serve. But if your party's lost 4 general elections in a row like we have, then that accessibility, accountability, and activity in your community needs to be turbocharged, because the result of not doing so means even more misery under the Tories. We also need our party's national executive to stop the factionalism and the petty infighting that dominates in a lot of our CLPs. In every CLP where this has been left to fester, it damages members' health, it damages electability, and it ends up losing us seats, or worse still, it stops people from wanting to stand for elected office. The route to us winning isn't going to be tested though in the House of Commons where I am, or in town hall chambers, or even in the press. It's going to be that face-to-face interaction with people and their communities. Until people feel we really do respect their views, and they then see us acting on those views, giving them that voice in Parliament or in the town hall, then they're not going to give us their vote again. That's where we went wrong with Brexit. I was really clear from the outset we were not listening to our communities, and it would cost us. And the recent report that Graeme referred to made it clear that that is where we lost. We lost 1.7 million Labour Leave voters. We only lost 1 million Remain ones. We could have won that election if we'd stuck to the 2017 commitment that we made. Our party as well was built to represent the working class, but the working class no longer exists as the homogenous group that people refer to it as. Society, people are more fractured than ever before, and we need to be making policies that speak to absolutely everybody across the board, because the class, my class, that we were built to represent has changed, but I don't feel that our party has changed with it. And I know everybody is working really hard at the task in hand. And you know, people down here all the time talk about we need to win the next general election in 2024. But we've got local elections coming up. We've got Tees Valley mayoral elections. We've got police and crime commissioner elections. We shouldn't be waiting until 2024. It's time for us to start winning again. And we all need to play our part in that and take some responsibility for the failures of the past 4 elections. I'm certainly not going to wait till 2024. And I bet none of you are either, because otherwise you wouldn't be on this call. And I'll just leave my comments there.
Emma, thank you very much. Susan.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for inviting me. If it looks like I'm frowning, it's because the sun is shining down and I have no means of stopping that. So I'm not frowning, I'm just squinting. I don't disagree with anything that's been said already. I think, you know, Graeme talks about, what was it, 113 pages of joy. Well, as some people on this call will know, I was a candidate in 2019, and it was 6 weeks of heartbreak, actually. I've done 35 years plus electioneering with this party, and it was the worst experience that I've ever been through. And it was because we'd stopped listening to people. So what we were saying, whilst bits of it connected with people and bits of it people could appreciate, the sum total they couldn't, and they didn't trust us anymore. And they didn't believe we had listened to them in the recent past, whether that be locally or nationally. And in 6 weeks, like Emma says, you can't change around that perception. The other problem we have in Northumberland, of course, is that we haven't controlled the council for the last 4 years. So anything that goes wrong, people still assume that Labour does control everything. So, you know, if we haven't got things because we've had 10 years of a Tory government, that doesn't matter because they voted Labour last time for the MP. So I thought after that election, one of our big problems was going to be that money was going to flood into this area and suddenly people were being rewarded for voting Conservative. I actually think that is less of a certainty now because there is no money, basically. And I think that whole levelling up, you know, the whole concept of levelling up when you've been in control for 10 years, when you've actually made those divisions and differences greater than they were when you took control, is laughable. But people weren't wanting that conversation by December, I don't think, last year. So what do we do now? As ever, you pick yourself up and you start again. And on election night, one of the first things I said to people that I was with was, I personally haven't lost anything. My party has, and my constituency has, and for that I'm devastated. But I wasn't an MP. I didn't lose a seat. I didn't have to make staff redundant a week before Christmas. And I was still leader of Northumberland Labour Group. And that was something that was worth having. So we only have elections every 4 years in Northumberland. So I'm not saying elections annually don't matter, they do. I know they do. But for us, it's make or break once every 4 years. We can't turn something round until another 4 years is up. And I think that we're in a much better place than I felt we were before lockdown. And that's not about cashing in on what's happened at all. I just think public mood and public sentiment has changed. And it's important that we talk to people in lots of different ways, because obviously we cannot knock on doors. And we actually build on that confidence in local government that Graeme was talking about. And it's, you know, it is years since I can remember anybody saying nice things about councils, but people have relied on councils and councils have delivered for the last 3 months for people across the spectrum. So we need to you know, bank on that. We need to use that. I think also people's communities have become more important. So people who maybe lived somewhere but travelled to work somewhere else, and their children went to school somewhere else, and they shopped in different places, have lived very close to home. And they've begun to realise the importance of the community networks around them, and also the environment around them, and see things through a different eyes. So I think those are the things that we need to be building on as we go into this election. Obviously, it's going to be very different. We're not anticipating probably door knocking this year. So we're going to have to use a lot of press, a lot of social media. We're not good at social media. I mean, I don't think the Labour Party is good at social media, and Northumberland is dire at it, and I'll put my hands up to that. You know, and that was where the Tories nailed us in December. Their social media, it wasn't particularly rocket science, but it was absolutely targeted at the people that they wanted to come out and vote for them, and it worked. And ours was sort of all over the place. So we've really got to sort that out more than ever. But what we're doing and what we had started doing before lockdown was a listening campaign with the people in Northumberland. And that will be on all kinds of different forums. We're going to use Zoom, we're going to use leaflets through the door, we've got Facebook and the website, and hopefully we can start knocking on doors as well. And it's actually asking people to help us develop the manifesto. Now that's not us going with a blank piece of paper, obviously, we've got some ideas ourselves. But it is about making people feel they've really got an investment in it, and that we're listening to what they want. Because again, Graham's absolutely right. Our voters are aspirational, whether they're aspirational for themselves and their life with their pensions or whatever, or their grandchildren or their children or themselves. And that was the trick I think we were missing last year when we were knocking on doors. We weren't talking about where the Labour Party came from. The Labour Party came from people wanting a better life for themselves and their families and their neighbours. And what we're saying to the people of Northumberland is help us develop some policies that will work. I'm being really tough, and I'm saying we're going to have 5 pledges. That is absolutely all. They need to be costed and they need a time scale for delivery. So I want some things we can deliver within the first month, 6 months. Some things that are medium term, but all of them have to be delivered by the time of the next election, so 4 years. And that's really hard, because once you start just talking to party members, let alone the public, you know, the wish list is huge. But I think we've got to deliver. We've absolutely got to deliver. And Northumberland, we've got an ageing population. We don't have many young people. We don't have enough to win us elections, and they, you know, they move away and they go to work and college and things. And I think that's true of the whole North East, not just the counties. But we've got to get those people on board with us and seeing that we will deliver for them. So I think that's everything. And I'm still squinting.
I didn't see much squinting at all. Susan, thank you very much. We've got a few...
Can I just say one thing, Graeme, and that is, again, it's been alluded to up to now, and I don't want to get into discussions about different leaderships particularly, but I do think the leadership of the party, for the first time, I've been a councillor since 1984, and this feels like the first time that we have a seat at the table properly. And, you know, I know that the leader is, and the local government team, led by Steve Reid, and meeting with leaders of Labour councils. They're also meeting with opposition leaders. Nobody's ever spoken to me before. Nobody's been interested in us. And they're not just seeing us as the foot soldiers. They see that it is the way that we win back control. It was what we did prior to 97. You know, you need to get the confidence back through delivery. And if you're like us at the moment and you can't deliver because you've got no MP and no council, you can't prove that. So, and I think that is really positive that the local government team, the shadow cabinet, they come from a local government background. They've all been councillors. They've been councillors in opposition and won control. So, you know, they're not just talking the talk, they actually did walk the walk. So that is really positive.
Yeah, I would echo that. One of the other hats that I sometimes wear is as the chair of the Society of Labour Lawyers Employment Group. And we have already had chats with a number of different teams within the Shadow Cabinet. David Lammy, of course, who is, I think, just brilliant. I would echo a lot of the causes for optimism that you guys have mentioned, and in particular, a change of leadership. It might be seen to be cynical, but the Tories are not going to be able to deliver their levelling up, expression I hate, agenda. Sad though that might be, objectively speaking. But I want to ask you, Emma and Susan, about something that Graeme said and something I think I agree with, which is that we took a hammering on Brexit. Do you think that Brexit is going to be a non-issue come at least 2024?
For my part, you know, even after the general election, it was still an issue when I was doing, you know, brief amount of door knocking before we went into lockdown. I still get emails about it. I don't think people were deeply, deeply hurt by our position in my patch. People really felt betrayed and let down. I mean, I was put in an unenviable position of having to make choices in Parliament between the party that I love or my entire community and my friends and family. And ultimately, I chose my friends, my family, and my community because that I am there to be their voice, and that's what I chose to do. But that came at a real cost to me. You know, my job was on the line at one point. They were looking to deselect us and replace us with a Remainer. You know, all of this was put at risk. And people don't forget that. People in the party haven't forgotten that in South Shields, and certainly my constituents haven't. Just today, there's a big thread on one of my Facebook posts talking about Brexit and people saying you and your party betrayed us. And these are all people from South Shields. So that damage that's done is going to take a hell of a long time to repair. And I don't think people will forget it. It really, really hurt people on my patch. And they're not going to forget that in a hurry, and certainly not by 2024. And remember, Brexit is still in the news. We haven't officially transitioned yet. You know, it's going to keep rolling on in the news right until December. And then whatever happens then, it's going to still be in the news. So this is far from over with. I know people like to think it is and that we need to draw a line under it, but until you've repaired the damage you've caused, you can't draw a line under something because people will just see that you're still not prepared to listen.
I think it's possibly slightly different. I mean, I can't speak for every constituency in Northumberland, and they're very different and they have different stances. So Hexham and Berwick constituencies were very pro-Remain, actually. My own was Leave, but it wasn't hugely Leave like some places were. But I think because we don't have a Labour MP, people will be making decisions at the next general, definitely, and hopefully also at the locals in May around what's being delivered now. Because one thing I've learned all these years is that the people are quite fickle. They forget and they do move on to like, you know, you remember when you say, well, we did this for you and you did that, and it's like, yeah, but what are you going to do tomorrow? So and we do have a bonus, and I'm really not being complacent about this because things can change, but we have the bonus of a really poor MP, Tory MP in Blythe Valley now, who only got elected over Brexit, who only got elected because he was a sycophant of Boris Johnson. I mean, that's what he said in his acceptance speech. He was going down to get Brexit sorted with Boris. So, you know, this whole fiasco of this Tory government proving that actually they can't do anything else, and Boris can't do anything else, I think damages him considerably. And he had no experience. He's not got good staff around him, so he's not delivering on casework and things. So I think for us, it's going to be less of an issue. People will be judging him on what he said he was going to deliver, rather than what we said, because we're not going to be in that position to do that.
We've had a number of questions in writing, and if you want to ask a question, there is a Q&A function. I'm going to go through some of them. So James Bartram asks, it looks like the only route to number 10 is through working with other progressive parties to get the Tories out. What are people's thoughts on this?
I'm not aware what another progressive party is. That's the problem that I have. And that whilst I can understand that desire to, you know, the Lib Dems in Northumberland vote with the Conservatives and gave the Conservatives places on committees when they were in control, because Northumberland has switched between all three parties. So I'm not convinced that they are progressive. And the Green Party really is not very strong in Northumberland. So if somebody could show me a Green Party that had the same principles as we do, then I think there's some scope. But I'm still a bit old school in that what we need to have is policies and reputation that people want to vote for us rather than somebody else. You know.
I think James's point raises the very, very necessary issue of us having to look at proportional representation here, because there was a Facebook post by a gentleman called Fenny who went through all of this, and it's excellent. It's really strong. It isn't good. It isn't good listening if you're the Labour Party, because it makes these points about, because the left are fighting like cats in a sack amongst each other, a Tory party with the weakest set of ministers in the history of politics got 42% of the vote and has been in power since 2010. So we genuinely do have to consider this. The problem that we have, and once again I go back to the report from ourselves regarding December 2019, is that where we got votes, we took them from the Liberal Democrats and we took them from the Greens, but we took them north. Down south, it's different. And when you look at the seats we lost and the seats that we gained, it's like two different countries in England, because we lost the Red Wall, but we gained Putney. And when you look at what's been done over the last 10 years of gains, the gains have been south of, to be honest, Manchester, not north of Manchester. So I think James's question is very, very important for us to give consideration to, because if we don't either work out a strategy to enable us to hoover up Liberal Democrat votes across the nation, not just in a part of it, because we need to pick up seats everywhere, we'll be in the same position, I expect, in 2024 of having recovered our voter share, having recovered some of our MPs, but the Tories still having a working majority, and basically another 5 years of Tory government, which I basically cannot even begin to work out in my head how I would cope with that. So I think that is one of the questions that we need to look at strategically going forward. If we cannot work with them, we must find a way of dealing with them so that there is only one left of centre option, and that is the Labour Party, Graeme.
I think I'll just come in on the back of that. For me, you know, my party is like my religion, and I don't see me sharing very many values with the Greens or the Lib Dems, if I'm entirely honest. And I think that goes for a lot of Labour Party members. You know, we carry our card and we believe in what it says on that card. I don't believe in what it says on the Green Party's membership card or the Lib Dems. I would rather see us taking votes off them than working with them. And by all means, you know, if you look at the parliamentary makeup, they don't have that many seats, and even if we went into an alliance with them now, the Tories would still be calling the shots and governing, yet we'll have sold out some of what we value and who we are just to do that. And I didn't get into politics to sell out who I am. I want to stay true to my party and the values that I hold dear, and I think we'd get ourselves into all kinds of muddles if we started branching out. You know, we need to get our own house in order and remember what we are about and who we stand for, not starting to look at other parties and thinking how we can join in with them, because they're not the same as us. The Lib Dems were the architects of, along with the Tories, of austerity that has battered our community. People will not forgive them for that. And the Green Party have one MP. So in terms of a route to number 10, I don't think it is the route to go down.
But I think the issue over PR, the problem with PR is that the party who's in control is never going to want to do it because they think they're never going to be out of control again. And it's only when they're out. So, you know, we had that opportunity and didn't go with it. But I think because of the demographics of the country that have changed so much, it's more important than ever now, because it isn't just what we've got both in terms of councils and MPs is London and university cities by and large. And once you move, because sometimes there's a bit of complacency in the LGA as well about all these Labour councils we've got. And when you say to them, yeah, but where are those Labour councils? You know, they're not in the places that we need. And I'm not sure with the demographics, it's going to be a really uphill task without maybe some kind of electoral reform. where you spread those votes around rather. And your reference to Putney, I mean, my son, the whole of the weekend after the election kept saying to me, "Never mind, Mum, we won Putney. Never mind, we won Putney." There's no point in piling up votes in London or in Manchester or Liverpool, which is what we're doing. We're just piling them up in the same place, and that isn't going to give us power.
Yeah. Tom Hunter has asked 5 questions. Tom, you'll forgive me if I don't ask all of them. But I'll go for the most recent one. He asks, how do Labour break through the 3-word slogan rhetoric, get Brexit done, etc., to convey to voters in all elections how bad the government's been and what positive things we've got to offer?
Well, we nearly did it in 2017. For the many, not the few was a really good slogan. It absolutely said what we were about. It's what we're always about. But once again, this is Trumpian politics. This is about having a nice, catchy little soundbite. Get Brexit done. That's what won everything. So we genuinely have to look at our comms and keep it simple. The electorate are not simple, but they like simple and easy understood messages. And in 2019, we were throwing out like chaff policies day after day after day after day, and people just did not either get it or believe that we could deliver it all. And when you ask them about, well, what do you think about nationalisation? What do you think about this? Whilst they liked it, when you actually look at what they then said, they did not trust us to then deliver it, or they did not trust us to control the cost of it. And the government is still seen as being stronger on the delivery of policy for the country than we are. And that's because we've been out of government now for 10 years. And we've got to address that. So simple, easily understood messages to the population is a key thing, but it should not make us simplistic. And that is easy for me to say. It is more difficult for us to deliver on, but I've got no doubt if that we come up with an overly wordy, policy-heavy approach to this, we'll just get slapped in the face by the electorate. And we need to basically start at local. In Sunderland, it'll all be about keep it safe, because that's been our message for 12 weeks and we're not moving from it. People in Sunderland understand the council has been all about looking after them. And when we run into the locals in May, we will continue that message. When we ever get allowed to go back to actually doing some local politics, because at the moment we can't because of the COVID crisis. So I think it's very important that we acknowledge how we message the people. And it's been what Susan said and what Emma said and what Graeme said. We all have to understand that to be trusted, sometimes the least said, easiest mended is definitely the approach, Graeme. So that's my piece on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I was talking about, you know, just having 5 pledges, no more than that. There might be lots of other stuff underneath it that you intend to work on, but in terms of communicating with the electorate, it is about simplicity. The media like simplicity as well. Let's not forget their role in this. And, you know, he is going to get Brexit done. And throughout all this crisis, when he disappears from our screens and does goodness knows what, they are still pushing forward with that. So it was very clever. It was very crass, but it was very clever and deliverable, because he knew one way or the other, with or without a deal, he could do it.
Yeah. Suppose people now, don't they, have such busy lives and have so much information coming at them all day long, 24-hour rolling news, Twitter, Facebook, you know, there's so much to keep on top of, and simplistic slogans work best for everything. And, you know, they tapped into that. And I knew that day when I saw Boris on the tractor smashing through the get Brexit done, I thought, we're finished here. We are done for. And instead of trying to claw it back a bit, what we did instead was started releasing new policies that weren't even in the manifesto. We looked like we were panicking. And you were going out and talking to people and they were saying, this is just getting out of control. We don't even know who you are anymore. You're releasing policies at a rate of knots. I couldn't even keep up with them all now as a candidate. It was absolutely ridiculous. And we just looked like we were throwing the kitchen sink at everything because we knew we were going to lose. Boris might not be around towards the end of the year. There's lots of calls for a public inquiry over his handling of coronavirus. There's lots of rumblings. Last week, a lot of the backbench MPs down here met with them and basically expressed real disappointment at how they are now in traditional Labour seats having to defend policies that him and Dominic Cummings are making up off the hoof and putting out there, and they're not able to articulate to their constituents what that's about. So I think Boris's days are numbered, but the Tories won't give up on power. They'll replace him with someone else. I think they'll probably replace him with Rishi Sunak because the whole country thinks thanks to Rishi they're getting their wages paid. Rishi was dragged kicking and screaming by the Labour Party to that, but people won't see it that way. And I think he'll be the new Boris, the new golden boy, even though I don't think he's up to the job either. So we do have a massive task on our hands, but, we've got so much talent in the party. We're all committed. We all want to get there eventually. And I think we will. It's just going to take a mountain for us. And we're going to have to be a bit savvier about our messaging, but also really honest and upfront with people as well, where we've failed and we've let them down, because they've ended up with a Tory government with an 80-seat majority that can do, quite frankly, what the hell it wants to the people in this country, and we can't stop them.
I think as well that it's really hard when it's 4 years away, because by then the electorate won't necessarily want to hear, oh well, what did they do, what the Tories are doing now. They will be basing their decision on their experience at that time. But I think, like the Tories did with us in 2008 and the financial crash, is we just need to continue saying some things for 4 years. And I know one of the strands that the party's very keen on is that the whole thing about betrayal of our key workers, not just the NHS, but actually those poor women mainly who work in care homes on the minimum wage, about shop workers. And it's, we need to watch, we don't need to watch closely, we'll see it happen at wage freezes, at cuts to local government, and we need to keep bringing it back to people. These are the people who looked after your mum or your grandma, and now they're not going to be paid a living wage. And we just keep that narrative going, boring though it sounds, but we need to get it registered in people's minds that they always blame them for it, not blame the council for it.
I think the one thing you can say about the Tories is that they are chameleon-like in their ability to adapt in order to win elections. And I think they would be very wise to get Sunak in and dump Boris, but I don't know if that is likely to happen. We're getting on for sort of 5 to 7. The one thing I want to ask you all is, we as a sort of fledgling group in the Northeast, we're keen to get involved. We're keen to do what we can to help next year and help in 4 years' time. What would you say is the big thing that we can do to help Labour get into power in the Northeast?
I would like the young Fabians to get into our CLPs.
Yeah.
Engage wherever you live. Go to your local CLP. As a party, we're very old, and whilst I'm in my 50s, I'm still technically young, I think, compared to the average age in my CLP. Please, I know, I am getting to be very old. But seriously, if we don't get the next generation of potential business leaders, thinkers, and politicians in at our CLPs, engaging and trying to drive activity and considered thought and debate, that's where you're most needed. I will always accept people in Sunderland turning up to help deliver leaflets and knock on doors. That is, as Susan said earlier, is far too late. We need to be having the conversations now about how we win our next election. And in Sunderland, that's in May, because I've got local elections. We run a third system, unlike Susan. So I've got locals in May. I've got the Police and Crime Commissioner election in May as well. So we need to get people engaged with us, giving us their input, intellectual input, because we need to understand everybody's perspective. So that's what I would ask people to do, because that then gets you talking to your councillors and gets you talking to the CLP executives, who are the people who volunteer to take the time to try and run politics in that area. That would be the best use of time, Graeme, from me.
I agree totally with Graeme. I mean, we will always need people on the doors, on the telephones delivering, but I think to have more young Fabians involved in local politics and in the local party helps democratise some of the debates that go on within our party, or have been doing recently. And you know, I would dearly love to see any of you who are from Northumberland, and I've recognised one person, to come along and help us rebuild this party, because it's pretty shattered at the moment and we haven't got a lot of time.
So I suppose in South Shields, where I'm quite fortunate, we've got quite a lot of young members already, and I tend to hold regular events where, you know, we have policy discussions and we get someone from a shadow minister or shadow cabinet to come along. So I would say just look out for those and come and join us, because I'm always up for, and I think the party's really always up for, new ideas and new thought and new ways of looking at things, because people can get set in their ways. Even I have been from time to time, you know, you get used to doing a particular way of campaigning, and even if it's not exactly working anymore, you keep doing it because it's what you've always done. But new faces, new people coming along who see something else and can switch it up a bit, can make that difference between the people who you're reaching out to. So if you live in Shields, look out for that and come along to some of my stuff that I do.
Great. Well, let me express, first of all, my apologies to those who asked questions and we didn't get round to. My very sincere gratitude to you three for coming and speaking to us.
Thanks for having us.
I hope people will get involved with the Young Fabians in the North East, and I hope you'll come along to other events where you might be able to ask those questions you weren't able to ask. I promise you a drink when we are all able to. But until then, thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Graeme. Thanks everyone for joining in.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.